step in the process of refinishing or restoration is to evaluate the wood. And that's what we did in an earlier video where we explained where some of the problems were going to come later once they were stripped, once the wood was stripped. And now the wood has been stripped prior to repairs and prior to finishing. So it's a revisiting of this set of wood, which is from a Rolls-Royce Corniche 1991. The main fascia, the main instrument fascia, and again this is walnut burl veneer with an inlay of boxwood and a crossband of paldeo. Some of the pieces that exhibit problems or exhibited problems when they were stripped are showing it later. Here we have no problem with the walnut burl, and the boxwood looks good, but we've got some flaking off in the paldeo area. So we're going to have to replace this. We use a waterproof glue, match the color as closely as possible. It might need bleaching the replacement piece in order to get it this light. This is pretty light paldeo. Similar problems here on this fascia for the AC vent is the paldeo has, the glue that was holding the paldeo has given way. The ashtrays similarly. Larger repair needed here for the walnut burl, which is missing. Also a line of the boxwood is going to have to be replaced. The worst piece, or the piece that showed the most concern for us, was the driver's side door. And as we pointed out in the earlier video, the boxwood inlay seemed to change character toward the rear of the door and toward the front of the door. So after stripping this, there's an interesting finding. Under the paldeo layer of crossband is a second layer of paldeo. And so what appeared to happen is that, well, stepping back a little bit, the way this piece would have been made would be there'd be a book match of the veneer, the walnut burl would be glued down, this upper piece, the solid walnut, is a separate piece, so the veneering was very likely done when this piece was flat without this upper solid walnut being attached. So you're dealing with a simpler element rather than having this piece on it. So there would have been a book match of the veneer. It would have been glued to this piece of walnut. After that dried, this rabbet would have been cut either by hand or by machine for the inlay and the crossband. Now veneer is only about 20 to 25 thousandths thick. So the walnut burl is, let's say, 25 thousandths thick. If this rabbet was cut too deep and the paldeo glued in, and if it was too low, then there would be no way to level this down without removing the walnut burl. And that's apparently what happened here. We're reconstructing somewhat like an archaeological dig, so to speak, but that is about the only thing that would explain two layers of the crossband, one on top of each other, is that the initial rabbet was too deep, and in order to build it up so that they would get flush with the walnut burl, they had to lay one and then a second one on top. So in doing that, in some areas, the boxwood was too low to show across the second layer of paldeo, and that's where some filler was added, right here, for example, which is still visible. And that explains what we saw under the finish and why there was some anomaly in the boxwood. Okay, so to demonstrate this construction technique, we have a piece of plywood with walnut burl glued to it, which takes the place of this vertical face of the door. So after this is dry, then you cut a rabbet in here, which is a little groove on edge, and you put the boxwood in the crossband of paldeo. I'm only going to demonstrate this with a paldeo. So just you can see that this is about 21 thousandths thick, 22 depending. So that groove, if that groove is too deep, as this side is too deep, we made this intentionally deeper. This paldeo is going to be well below the level of the walnut burl. And if you glue this down and try to make these two woods even and level, you're likely to sand through the walnut burl because it's only 20 thousandths thick too. However, on the other side, we did a proper rabbet so that when the paldeo sits in here, it's at the same level as the walnut burl and will require minimal cleanup and sanding. But on this side, it's very likely, if you had this, you would have to go ahead with a second layer of wood to bring it up to the level. Now, all of that is important in the sense, obviously, there wasn't an intent to make it too deep. Here's the other door cap, and you can see that there was no paldeo under it. It was the right depth. But what complicated it, or what became complicated, was the boxwood that was missing. So we didn't have a continuous line of boxwood. There was some boxwood and then filler where that was necessary to bring the boxwood up to the new level that they were dealing with. So we'll be back and revisit this set for the third episode, and that's a completed set. We're also building a custom full burl steering wheel for this customer, and we'll show all that at a later date. Thank you.